if these things that we're experiencing are the natural progression of what happens when you do seed life on planet, or you do accelerate biological life. You do have some sort of a genetic intervention where you take this thing that it has emerging intelligence and you accelerate it. And that thing will in turn, with all of its desire for innovation and creativity, and also all of its desire to control resources and have power and have influence, that it will eventually lead to the creation of what we're seeing. That these things are the next stage of this process. And that maybe we're dealing with one form of that next stage, but there's another stage that's a million years more advanced than that, that's far superior, that doesn't even have a biological limitation in terms of physical space, that it exists completely in some other undetectable realm. That is no longer thinks about biological limitations of life and death and communication. It exists completely in some other space. That's what these things are. And then I always wonder, when there's a crash or when there's a body or when there's a this and that, like, and people saying, well, why, if they're so advanced, why are they crashing? Well, hold on. What version are we looking at? We're not saying there's one thing that's visiting us. If there's one thing that's visiting us and we know where this one thing is, we could say, oh, well, that thing, it deals with a completely different solar system that's not as vulnerable. It doesn't have asteroid clouds. It doesn't have all these different things where it's like, it doesn't have a planet that has super volcanoes. Maybe life evolved in a more stable environment and it allowed it to get to a far greater technological level, but not the ultimate.
Yeah, we might be testing the extent of their adaptability. And like I said, are they crashing by accident?
Right. Mission
failure? Or on purpose?
Right. Well, just think about communication. Communication used to be you had to get in front of someone and you had to talk to them. So you had to know their language. You had to either nonverbal or verbal communication. You had to figure out a way to say things to them.
Yeah.
That's no longer the case. Obviously, with this new Android operating system, it translates. But also, the fact that you could have a fucking FaceTime call with someone in Japan right now, and you instantaneously can communicate back and forth, which is insane.
Yeah, that's a vast distance, but for us, it's like stupid. It's like easy.
Vast distance and
we're
instantaneous.
Tunneling. Yeah.
That's like Pong. You know, that's Morse code. That's like, it's very primitive in terms of what if you physically can be in these places instantaneous?
Yeah.
And why would we assume that that's not eventually going to be on the menu?
Yeah, and of course, friend of mine, Eric Weinstein, certainly espouses we don't even have the right theoretical frameworks right now. You know, he has his own geometric unity theory, and he's way smarter than I am.
He's too smart. He has he's got some unique theories himself about where all this stuff is coming from, and it's all very, very, very interesting and intriguing, but also makes sense. All of it makes sense, including being visited. You know, I had this conversation with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's like, why would they be interested in us? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
We're super interested. Yeah. Neil, I mean, obviously he's a fine science communicator, kind of the successor of kind of the Carl Sagan kind of
I think Carl Sagan was a little bit more open-minded.
Yeah. I like Carl better. But
I'm more of a fan. Wish he was still alive. I love to smoke weed with that guy. He was really into weed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really into it. I have a theory that the universe itself is God. I think
that's like what I was talking about with the multidimensional creator creating universes. Yeah,
I think we have a very limited idea of when we say God. When God created the heavens and like, right. But what are we saying? I think it's the universe itself. I think it's one thing, and that this one thing, it seeks to create these things that continually push the envelope and may be gods themselves eventually. I think if you extrapolate from our ability versus the ability of an amoeba and you continue to move that along, what does that do? Well, it's going to be able to create universes. There's already been like theoretical papers that have been written about the creation of other things like black holes, other things like a universe. So what is involved in the creation of a universe? What is involved in the Big Bang? Can that be replicated? Well, not now, but if AI becomes sentient and AI eventually makes far greater versions of itself, if it keeps doing that, like what are the limits of its potential? Like, literally creates a simulated environment that's indiscernible. You can't tell the difference between that and regular life. Well, maybe because there is no difference. Maybe that is what, I mean, that's the theory of simulation theory.
Yeah, simulation theory, familiar. And that is a possibility because the universe seems like a little too perfect. It's a little strange, very created to me. So just like we're in the Goldilocks zone, perfect temperature, like it's just real
how
weird.
About the Big Bang itself? Like what happened? Something smaller than the head of a pin for no known reason becomes everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's the universe expanding into?
Right.
It's like a quantum foam or whatever the heck the latest theory is that's like beyond me.
And then it perhaps just retracts back down to that infinitely small thing and then expands again, and that this is an endless cycle, and that we're just so limited because of our biological limitations, or our life and death is such a small little tiny blip. It's so minuscule in terms of just the overall known life of the universe. And then you have the James Webb telescope that's, there's people that question the actual length of time that occurred between the Big Bang and now, that maybe it might be far longer. And there's people like Brian Keating that say that's not correct. It's just a lack of understanding of what we understand currently about the creation of galaxies. And that
because I mean, obviously the length of the age of the universe keeps on getting older and older, and a lot of that's because of the Doppler shift, right? The red shift. As the galaxies are accelerating away, we can calculate what their origin point probably was and how long it took for them to speed up like that, right? So,
and only based on our current understanding.
Yes.
Which is obviously at least fairly limited in terms of what its potential is.
Well, like we still don't quite understand the origin of the moon. The moon is at the right location that causes solar and lunar eclipses. It's like the right apparent size to block out the sun. It's like super weird. Same thing with like Mars. We're not sure like what happened there, where Mars, had some probable life on it. Either a protoplanet hit it, or there was some kind of impact that vaporized stuff, and like who knows? So,
who knows?
Yeah.
And this is just this little tiny neighborhood that we're looking at. It's like we are in our backyard looking for evidence of like life in Africa. Like, you're not going to figure it out here. We're just looking at it such a small scale in terms of what we could potentially discover or potentially observe.
Yeah.